My girlfriend kept me waiting for 2 hours at a fancy restaurant on my birthday dinner. She finally arrived with another man, kissed him in front of me, and loudly said, "See, told you he'd still be here like a pathetic puppy." I just smiled, stood up, and shook the other man's hand. This morning, my phone showed 78 missed calls, and her belongings were stuffed into garbage bags outside the apartment. The one she just found out the pathetic puppy actually owns. Last night was my 34th birthday. I spent the first 2 hours of it sitting alone at the most expensive restaurant in the city, watching the waiter's expression shift from polite to pitying. My girlfriend, Isabella, was late. That wasn't unusual, but 2 hours was a new record. I'd called and texted. No response. I was about to give up and leave when she finally made her grand entrance. Only she wasn't alone. She walked in holding hands with some guy I'd never seen before, a smug-looking man with a perfect haircut and a shiny designer watch. They stopped right at my table. Isabella didn't even look at me. Instead, she leaned in and gave him a long, deliberate kiss right there in front of everyone. Then, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, she said, "See? Told you he'd still be here, like a pathetic puppy." The guy chuckled. The whole place went silent. I could feel every eye in the room on me, waiting for the explosion, but it never came. Something inside me went perfectly calm. The hurt and anger were there, sure, but distant, like they were behind thick glass. That I looked at Isabella's smug, triumphant face, then at the guy beside her, who now looked a lot less confident than before. I smiled, a real, easy smile. Then I stood up, smoothed my jacket, and held out my hand to him. "Congratulations," I said evenly. "You've clearly won the prize." He looked confused, but shook my hand anyway. I dropped a $100 bill on the table for the drinks I'd had, nodded to the stunned waiter, and said, "Have a great night." Then I walked out. No running, no yelling, no scene. Just gone. The cool night air felt incredible. It was the first breath of a new, better life. The pathetic puppy had just slipped his leash, and he was heading home to burn the whole doghouse down. The story with Isabella is old as time, I guess. We met 2 years ago, and for the first year, she was everything: fun, affectionate, admiring my work ethic. I'm a private guy about money. I've learned that flashing wealth just attracts the wrong kind of people. I live in a penthouse, but the building's understated. I drive a reliable, modest car. I dress well, but I don't chase labels. Isabella knew I did well, but she never knew how well. She assumed I had a decent job with a comfortable income. I never corrected her. I wanted her to love me for me, not for what I had. But over time, her true colors came through. Entitlement crept in. She complained that my car wasn't a Mercedes, that we didn't take enough spontaneous trips to Europe. She stopped treating me like a partner and started treating me like a provider. Her job was something vague, social media consulting, but it never seemed to pay anything. I covered everything: rent, food, vacations, her car, her endless collection of designer clothes. At first, I didn't mind. I was in love and could afford it. But gratitude slowly turned into entitlement. Affection became transactional, something she turned on only when she wanted something expensive. She loved telling people we lived in her apartment. It was this odd habit I never bothered to correct. "You have to come over to my place," she'd tell friends. She picked out most of the furniture, and I let her. I wanted her to feel at home. I didn't realize she was building a fantasy where she was the lady of a house that was never hers to begin with an S-O when she called me a pathetic puppy. It wasn't just cruel. It was revealing. That's how she truly saw me. Loyal, obedient, and waiting. What she didn't know was that the puppy didn't just live in the penthouse. He owned the entire building that I bought the entire apartment block 4 years ago as an investment through a holding company. It was one of the smartest financial decisions I ever made, and it had paid off handsomely. Isabella knew I had some investments, but she thought they were just the usual stocks and bonds. She never asked for details. She was always more interested in the spending side of money, not the earning side. The building was managed by a property management firm that handled all the day-to-day operations. Technically my landlord, but really they were on my payroll. When I got home from the restaurant, the first thing I did was head straight to the spare bedroom. That was really her space, racks and racks of clothes, shoes, and handbags worth more than my car. I didn't bother with suitcases. I went to the storage closet, grabbed a roll of heavy-duty black garbage bags, and started pulling everything off the hangers. Dresses, coats, jeans, everything went in. Then the shoes, the makeup, the jewelry box, the laptop, all of it that I was methodical, almost mechanical. It didn't feel emotional. It was just a cleanup job. It took me over an hour, and by the end, there were 12 large garbage bags full of her life. I dragged them out one by one and lined them neatly in the hallway outside my door. Then I called a 24-hour locksmith. While I waited, I walked through the apartment collecting anything else that was hers, photos, trinkets, books. I put them in a smaller bag and set on top of the pile. The locksmith arrived around midnight, a tired-looking guy who'd probably seen his share of domestic meltdowns. He changed both the main lock and the service door quickly and quietly. I paid him in cash, thanked him, and when he left, the apartment finally felt like mine again. That I poured myself a whiskey, sat on the couch, and looked around the now quiet, empty space. Peaceful. Then the phone started ringing. Isabella. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text. Where did you go? That was not funny that I deleted it. Then another call, this time from an unfamiliar number. I ignored it too. A few minutes later, another voicemail. Her new guy, Julian, yelling into the phone. I turned the ringer off completely, switched on the TV, and enjoyed the silence. The messages kept pouring in all night, a blizzard of missed calls and desperate texts. But I was done. When I woke up the next morning, I felt better than I had in years. Out of curiosity, I checked my phone. 78 missed calls. Isabella, Julian, a few of her friends. The voicemails were chaos. The early ones angry and indignant. The later ones panicked, tearful, and finally furious again. It was the sound of someone realizing they'd lost control. Around 9 in the morning, the real entertainment started. From my office, I saw the hallway feed on my security camera. Isabella and Julian were standing in front of my door, staring at the pile of garbage bags. Her face was pure rage. She started kicking the bags, screaming about her expensive clothes being ruined. Julian looked miserable, like a guy who suddenly realized he'd walked into someone else's storm. She started pounding on my door, shouting my name. I let her go on for a few minutes, sipping my coffee while watching her tantrum. Then I opened the door just a few inches. She froze, surprised. "What is this?" she screamed, pointing at the bags. "What is wrong with you?" "Those are your belongings," I said calmly. "I figured you'd need them." "You threw my stuff out like trash," she shouted. "My key doesn't work. You're going to let me into my apartment right now." I let a small smile touch my lips. "I think you're confused," I said evenly. "This isn't your apartment." The look on her face was priceless. Pure disbelief turning to panic. "What are you talking about?" "Of course it is. My name's on the lease." "No," I said. "You've never seen a lease. You've never signed one. And you've certainly never paid a dime of rent." The color drained from her face as the truth started to click. "This is my apartment," I continued quietly. "In fact, it's my building. I own it. Every floor, every unit. The pathetic puppy you mocked last night, he's your landlord." I paused, watching the horror set in. Or rather, I added, he was. "Your tenancy, informal as it was, is now officially terminated. You have 10 minutes to remove your trash from my hallway before I have security do it for you," I said. She just stared at me, her mouth hanging open. Julian looked like he'd seen a ghost. He took a step back, putting distance between himself and the disaster unfolding in front of him. Isabella finally found her voice. "You're lying," she whispered. That I reached back into the apartment and grabbed a folder from the hall table. I pulled out a copy of the building deed with my name and the name of my holding company, clearly visible. I held it up for her to see. The silence was perfect. In that moment, her entire world, built on my supposed weakness and her inflated sense of entitlement, crumbled into dust. She wasn't a powerful woman with a man wrapped around her finger. She was a freeloader being evicted by the man she had publicly humiliated just hours earlier. "You can't do this," she stammered, tears starting to spill down her face. "I have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a personal problem," I said evenly. "Perhaps Julian can help you." You two seemed very close last night. I glanced at Julian, who was already edging toward the elevator. He wanted no part of this. He'd been there for the fun, not the fallout. 9 minutes, I said, and closed the door, locking the deadbolt. From my security feed, I watched as she collapsed on top of the garbage bags, sobbing. Julian hesitated for a second, mumbled something, and practically ran for the elevator. He was gone. She was alone, with her trash. The smear campaign came next. Of course, that a couple of hours later, she must have gathered her things and left, because the hallway was empty. But then my phone started buzzing. Text from mutual friends. Dude, what happened? Isabella saying you threw her out for no reason, that she'd spun a story about me having a breakdown, claiming she tried to gently end things, and I'd thrown her onto the street. Naturally, she left out the part about showing up to my birthday dinner with another man and calling me a pathetic puppy. I didn't bother arguing. I sent one concise reply to a few key people. For my birthday, Isabella brought another man to the restaurant, kissed him in front of me, and announced to the room that I was a pathetic puppy for waiting for her. I ended the relationship. The apartment she lived in for free, located in a building I own, is no longer available to her. End of story. The facts spoke for themselves. Some of our friends had even been at the restaurant and witnessed it all. Her narrative fell apart almost immediately. The same friends who had texted me in concern soon messaged back with apologies and disbelief. I had no idea. She's insane, one wrote. Then came the financial retaliation. The next day, I got a fraud alert from my credit card company, an attempted charge of over $5,000 at a luxury handbag store. It was from a supplementary card Isabella had under my account, one I'd completely forgotten about. I called the bank, reported it as stolen, and canceled it on the spot. She'd gone straight from eviction to a revenge shopping spree, assuming the free ride was still active. The declined charge must have been another shock for her. A few days later, her family joined the chaos. Her mother, who had always treated me with polite disdain, called me, screaming. She called me a monster, a vindictive man who'd heartlessly thrown her innocent daughter out. I let her rant for a minute, then calmly cut in. Ma'am, your daughter publicly humiliated me on my birthday with another man. She was living rent-free in my property, and that privilege has been revoked. If you have further concerns, you can contact my lawyer. I gave her my lawyer's name and number and hung up. The final act of desperation came a week later that I got an email from Julian, the guy from the restaurant. Surprisingly, it was a sincere apology. He said Isabella had told him I was controlling and emotionally abusive, that she was terrified to break up with me. She'd orchestrated that public stunt at the restaurant to free herself. He wrote that after seeing what really happened at the apartment, he realized he'd been used as a pawn in her little drama. She'd been calling him nonstop ever since, begging for money and a place to stay. He'd blocked her number. That he ended his message with, "You dodged a bullet, man." I didn't reply, but I appreciated the confirmation. Eventually, word got around about what happened to her. With no home and no income, she had to move back in with her parents. Her friends, drained by her endless drama and money requests, started to distance themselves. She had built her identity around a lifestyle she never earned and couldn't maintain on her own. Without me, the pathetic puppy funding her world, her glamorous life vanished. Months passed, and peace settled in. I redecorated the apartment, made it mine again, focused on my work, traveled with friends, and enjoyed the quiet freedom. Then, one night, we went out for drinks at a bar downtown, a place I hadn't been in years. As I sat at our table, I glanced up and saw her. Isabella. She was working as a cocktail waitress. Our eyes met across the room. Gone was the arrogance, the triumph. What replaced it was something I'd never seen on her face before. Shame. She looked away quickly and disappeared into the back. I didn't feel triumph or revenge, just a quiet, complete sense of closure. She had tried to humiliate me, to make me small and pathetic. But in the end, her own choices brought her exactly where she belonged.